Oh, no.
Lynx, Hecky Thump, what's wrong, Grandad? Don't you want a kebab from that takeaway booth?
That's no takeaway booth, you wet wipe. That's a Sontaran scout ship. A Sontaran Experiment. Oh, hello, RTD here. Right in the middle of writing some other queer drama, just on the side, darlings, you know what it's like. Now, I was asked the other day about the Sontaran Experiment. Now, the Sontaran Experiment give me ideas. Ideas for Nuwho. Yes, 45 minutes of drama, 45 minutes of chaos, 45 minutes of jeopardy. That's what I thought. Tell you what, it was a good idea, wasn't it, to have a taut two-parter? Yes, I agree with that. And it also had a narrative arc with Nuwho Beacon. So, I love my narrative arcs. Gorgeous arcs, darling. So, sit down, because this is what give me my idea for Nuwho. Telling you what, taut two-parter, I wouldn't mind a taut two-parter. Oh, I've got another idea for a queer drama. Hurry! Hurry! A taut two-parter!
Well, Sontaran Experiment, 50 years old. I can't believe it, actually, 50 years. But
Just to point out,
Yes.
it's 50 years since Margaret Thatcher became leader of the Tory party.
So Thatcher, Sontaran, I don't know. But I was going to say, I know this was the key burning issue for me, which is there haven't been many two-parters. And I know when I was texting John the other day, maybe there was a hint he's thinking, well, it was a bit lightweight, this two-parter. Why is it substantially enough to do a review of? And the very point is, aren't these a template for RTD, if you get my gist? Because unlike The Awakening, unlike some of the other two-parters we've had over the years, this one also linked to the Nuwho Beacon arc, linked to Genesis. There was a little mini arc. And I think, to be honest, in many ways, I don't know what you think, this is a bit the forerunner to RTD. It's a 45-minute or so show.
That was a clever choice of words. A mini arc, A-R-C, with the arc, A-R-K.
Oh. You know what? Where's my script? No.
This is why it gets the big bucks, people.
But no, whatever you think of the Sontaran Experiment as a two-parter, do you see how... You see... If you're going to be critical of it and say, well, it's a bit lightweight, it's a bit of entertainment, but it's a bit light, it's insignificant, really, blah, 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 whatever you're going to say in a moment, that's basically what a lot of people would say about the current era, which is they're light and frothy, bang, 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 off you go. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's very perceptive of you, Brendan. It's very perceptive of you. Essentially, which is unusual for you.
I'm peaking early.
Oh, don't do that. Jamie, well, mind you, Jamie, tell us all about that too. But anyway, the thing about that is you're quite right. It is a sort of window into the future. But it does have links, as you said. There's an arc that it links both forwards and backwards. And Robert Holmes reuses ideas later on, which we may get to when you do your Time Eddy stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I didn't see this as particularly light and frothy. I found this quite on revisiting it, it's quite a miserable experience. You know, I don't mean miserable in terms of viewing, in just terms of the whole experience with the people in it. It's quite a black story, this. So, light and frothy, no, but nice, tight 50-minute adventure, move on, yes.
Yeah. I mean, Michelle, sadistic, tight, taut.
It is a very dark story because there is a lot of, I mean, the Sontarans, I mean, they're experimenting on people for their pain levels. It's these people are stuck on this very dark, cold and damp, soggy more territory, but it also shows that you can do a tight, good 50-minute Doctor Who story. For those who are, because many times I'm critical of the modern era that doesn't have enough time to breathe, but this shows that done well, you can actually do a 50-minute Doctor Who story and have a storyline and have it be compelling and have good entertainment and have it wang bang and done.
Yeah.
And something for everybody to do as well.
Yeah, and it's actually quite scary. I mean, you almost have, kind of reminds me of the tripods with and was the tripods written in the 70s with the little machine going after them. Kind of reminds me of the tripods. I remember I had to read that in 7th grade, and I hated it at the time. But now I want to go back and reread it because at that time I didn't like science fiction. But kind of reminds me of
there's an adaptation of it, Michelle. British adaptation of it, if you can find it. Which is not bad. Runs out a bit of steam towards the end, but it's reasonably well done.
Yeah, I know that they got cancelled too early.
A reasonable budget for the time.
Better than Doctor Who. Yeah.
Yeah, and it has Peter Davison's future wife in it.
So, Hugh, what were your thoughts on the actual, sadistic two-parter? It's a forerunner. It's a template RTD may have thought of using.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of mini arcs quite good because it does fit it in, and I think that's what actually makes the two-parter work. Is the connection to Ark in Space means that it's not just the two parts that follows on and adds in an aspect. So I think it's very interesting because it's so unusual at the time. I remember watching it and being quite confused by the fact that it was a two-parter because I don't think I'd ever seen one.
No.
Until that stage. So it's quite odd. Does it work? I think overall probably. It's just quite clever in some ways, I think, and do it that way. And then, it's interesting that it's part just in the middle of two of my favourite stories as well. So at the time watching it, it felt insubstantial because Ark in Space and Genesis of the Daleks are quite so good.
Yeah. I mean, Brian, if you do a statistical analysis of classic Who, two-parters were obviously very, very rare. Yes, therefore, they were not the default for the writers or the producers. And I find it fascinating that all these years later, it is the default because it's a 45-minute episode we're getting. So what wasn't the default is now seen as the default. I mean, when you watched it again, were you thinking, gosh, it's similar to now? It's got a similar format? Or was it so different?
I didn't, excuse me. I mean, yeah, there's something to say about how it matches up with today's 45-minute episodes. The thing is that I don't know if this was the particular season that RTD said that he wanted to have like a story arc that went through the whole season with no breaks really in between episodes. That would this is a lot like the Troughton era where they got into an adventure, they got to the end, and then immediately like the Macra terror, the claws were on the screen, and then you went right to the next story, There was no break in between, and that's what I really loved about this season. As far as the show being only two parts, I remember originally as a child when I saw it, I was confused. Why is this so short? But it works. It really does work. I don't know if they actually took maybe one episode from Genesis. I don't know if they maybe shortened it down or trimmed it so they could make their epic Dalek story. But no, it's I think it's a a great template. If they wanted to make it a perfect template, go back to 25-minute episodes.
Mhm.
That's what would make me happy.
I mean, it's interesting. You can see here I'm showing Black Orchids, The Awakening, The King's Demons, The Rescue, Edge of Destruction. They're the only ones before and after in the classic period. On a lot of them, you could say historical light. There seems to be a few touches of that. You know, yeah, like The Rescue and The King's Demons, it's basically the quick kind of unraveling of the reveal, and then it's kind of deal with the reveal. It's character development, plot, world building. Do you think these two-parters in the classic era worked? And do you think Sontaran Experiment is a good fit within those?
It does fit.
I'm not sure there is a template within it, because Edge of Destruction is still a one-off in many ways, and it maybe is a template in some ways for where we are now, but that's to do a specific thing, as is The Rescue, which is to introduce a character, and this does something different and runs on in this arc part. So I think two-parters are generally experimental and generally for their own reasons at the time. So.
Yeah, what were you going to say, John?
Yeah, I was just thinking, in terms of world building, it does in 2 episodes. It does it perfectly well. It sets the scene for the Earth we've heard about in Ark in Space. You know, following the solar flares. But on a point of view of practicalities, this essentially is a 6-part story, Ark in Space, and 2 episodes of location filming of Sontaran Experiment, and it was a production choice not to have a 6-parter to break it up, because they knew that essentially 6-parters were 4 parts of a story and a dog leg, you know, with 2 episodes going on. If you look on Doctor Who, 6-parters, episode 4, it takes a turn and off we go somewhere else and do something else. So this was an attempt, rather than do that, to try something completely different with it. And that's why it's all on location. John and Nathan Turner repeated a similar bit of jiggery-pokery later in the 14-episode seasons by taking a 6-parter and basically making it 2 3-parters to get more bang for his buck. So that was the reason behind this, you know, to split it up, to make it a bit more. And I'm glad, because as good as the Ark in Space is, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as good had it been 6 episodes on Nerva Beacon. So yeah, that was the necessity behind this. But I think this is probably one of the if not the best original of the original 2-parters that you get in Doctor Who, whether you in terms of the way it's structured and how it works and how it pans out. The only one that competes with this, and although it's not a particular favourite, I just think it fits neatly into 2 parts, is Black Orchid. It just fits that very, very neatly without having to worry about going anywhere else and doing anything else. So had we got the opposite, a 6-episode Ark in Space as opposed to 4 and 2, I think the season would have been the worst for it. So yeah, just for the experimentation side of it, pardon the pun, it works, and we're given a nice little gem into the bargain.
I mean, I can see your point, actually, because yes, it isn't just a 2-parter. That it is heavily linked. As I said, there was an arc, but you could argue what you said, the 4 plus 2. I mean, I'm watching the Invasion of Time at the moment, and for really 4 parts, you know, you've got the is it the Valdans? I can't remember.
Vardans.
Vardan.
Shimmery tinfoil man and woman.
Yeah. And then you only get the Sontarans really for the 2. And then you think, well, it's a 4 plus 2. And actually,
you think about that, and you think, sorry to interrupt, and you think about Talons of Wing Chiang, you know, you have the theatre, 2 episodes, you have the House of the Dragon, you know, Bridge, other ones. In Seeds of Doom, you start with the 2 in the Antarctic base, and then you have 4 episodes back in the UK. So yeah, it's notorious for happening here, and they did something different with this, and I thought it was the better for it.
Right, before we move on to just the Sontaran Experiment, if I asked every one of the panel, out of, you know, you've got Edge of Destruction, The Rescue, Black Orchid, The Awakening, King's Demons, and you've got the Sontaran Experiment. Where would you pitch the Sontaran Experiment regarding as a top ranking 2-parter, low ranking 2-parter? Brian?
Oh, definitely near the top.
And go on, you can give us a quick synopsis why.
Well, for starters, just being back with Tom Baker, it was going to what John had said. I can't believe I never considered it. doing 4 parts Ark in Space and 2 parts with the Sontaran Experiment. It's a nice way of kind of tying things up, but in a completely different setting. We get stories like The Awakening there, although I am a huge fan actually of Black Orchid as a standalone serial. I just, it's probably a bit of nostalgia that was one of the first episodes I'd ever seen, and it made a big impact on me. But yeah, I think it's one of the stronger ones for sure.
Okay. Michelle, what are your thoughts on the comparisons?
I would put this a high ranking 2-parter. And this is somebody who really adores The Awakening, being that I am an historian, and there's so many parallels to The Awakening of the dangers of letting the past consume your present. And I've seen people go down that route where they almost get taken over, in that mindset of the history. But this is a really high-end Sontaran experience, the high-end for the 2-parters.
Okay, Hugh?
I think that I like pretty well all of the 2-parters apart from one. You can say what that is. I think they're all. I think they're all pretty good. I don't like the King's Demons because it's a mess. But actually, for different reasons, I like all of the rest of them.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you say the King's Demons, because we all know the story that the King's Demons wasn't meant to end the season, so maybe it would have felt better if it had led into.
It's not a great story, but I have a soft spot for the King's Demons.
Yeah. So, John, on your rating, your comparison,
I think I'd already answered that question, Brendan. I said this is way up there for me in terms of 2-parters because it's a perfect example of how to shape a nice little 2-parter, and even have some references backwards and forwards to what's coming. And although Brian said what he likes about the season is the fact that one story leads into another, I don't do Big Finish, but I think they've already found ways to squeeze in gaps. Probably, I think they have between. Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, I don't do this, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a perfect little gem. It's small and beautifully formed, a bit like myself.
And just to add my tuppence worth, it out of all the 2-parters, I know they've all got good reasons, like introduction of Vicky, etc., and even the King's Demons, a bit of fun with bringing the master back with a dodgy beard. But this is my favorite 2-parter. It really is. It did feel taut. I did like the dark element. It did. When we do the fear factor, I was scared stiff, so it worked for me. Now, Brian, as soon as we mentioned the Sontaran Experiment, you made a reference to. It was a reference to Sesame Street. I don't get from this side of the pond, but I think Michelle does as well. Go on, Brian. What is it?
When I was a kid, this actually aired very close to when the Sontaran Experiment did, and it's that robot's mouth that always gets me because it resembles the top of the scavenger as well as the body and even the legs. It's just really crazy far. I mean, he's got a beanie with an arrow on his head, little bow tie, gumball machine.
As an American, I just want to know how much of my tax dollars went to that.
No, you were paying for the BBC. Forget you.
Well, that too. Since I am a American citizen, can we have some say into how actually Doctor Who's run?
Michelle, we don't. we
took a bloody license of no say so.
No. I don't believe in paying. I don't even believe in paying for PBS, let alone BBC.
I believe PBS is all done by donations. Well, at least mostly.
We'll find out. So
I thank you for that kind of comparison. I think we can play top trumps on this, Brian, because well, number one, the Sontarans were the spud heads or the Humpty Dumptys. I mean, you can say what you want, but this spud is very relevant, as the lads know, because isn't that the probe that the Sontaran had, surely in Sontaran Experiment? I mean, look at these same. What do you reckon, John?
Absolutely, and it's not so much. I mean, to look at them, not so much, but it's the noise. It's the noise.
Oh, yes,
these metal mashed potato men make, and the noise that the that the robot makes. It's so similar suite of noise there as well.
If Brian and Michelle haven't seen this is an advert for instant mashed potato, Cadbury Smash, which I think most people of my age can quote verbatim.
For mash, get smash.
They peel them with their metal knives.
Oh,
They boil them for 20 of their minutes. Then they smash them all to bits.
I mean, they do sound like Daleks as well, slightly, don't they?
But they're
See,
definitely.
in the United States, getting smashed sounds like getting high.
Yeah.
So, you know, an euphemism for getting high or drunk. So you got
just to let
potatoes there.
But just to let you know, this product is still available. You can still buy it in shops and supermarkets. Other instant mashed potato products are also available.
So this is a bit Sontaran Experiment light, but then as you saw, Metal Mickey. I think I should mention Metal Mickey because there's an element of Metal Mickey, I think, in the Sontaran Experiment as well. What do you reckon?
Boogie Boogie.
With Irene Handel.
It reminds me more of Twiggy.
Metal Mickey used to be shown on ITV just before season 18. So that was part of my, time in 1980 was spent Metal Mickey in season 18. So Metal Mickey was like the overture to Tom's more somber Doctor in season 18. So I have a lot of affection for Metal Mickey.
Yeah, lovely Metal Mickey. There he is with the family. It's a very strange family, but there you go. There. So yes, opposition to Doctor Who almost, and that because that's what we're talking about. I mean, I do see, especially with the lamps or the eyes it has and the twitching of it. But I love seeing all the fact that look at those. I mean, we know Daleks can't move either, but look at that. That's fab. I just love seeing this contraption.
I kept watching this going, this had to be difficult film shoot because you're out in the middle of the moor somewhere and this is not even ground and they're hopping and skipping over rocks and
cold, I mean
it's cold and it's damp and
it rained all the time apparently, although on the footage it doesn't look as though there's a few shots you can hear the puddles, but
I love this little wheels. It's like a hostess trolley.
Yeah, it's like supermarket sweep or something. I don't know. It's like
shortly after this was in the Sontaran Experiment, it went straight to the Sale of the Century and was sold up by Nicholas Parsons.
Yeah, you'd only buy that for £5 though, wouldn't you? You wouldn't. That's not the car.
£5 done.
I mean, when they get it whizzing along, and you think, I remember being a kid. I mean, you were kind of used to Doctor Who were looking wobbly, and I remember thinking, "Oh God, that's not bad." And in a way, isn't that slight forerunner to the big droid thing in Empire Strikes Back on the planet Hoth? I mean,
that guy. It's got the little legs like.
But when you look at it in photograph, look at the little tram. I mean, that's like a pram wheel. It's like,
yeah.
Got to make do.
Yeah, I mean, you have to sort of understand. Obviously, the budget is what it is. It's only in it for, not minutes. I mean, it's not long at all. So it's not even
classic Who doing the best that modern Who could learn from is you use your budget, you figure out how to make something creative. You're not relying on CGI. You're not relying on these big whiz bam, circles in the round to make something that's convincing.
That's the point.
Scared a bunch of kids.
Yeah, and for the benefit of 50 years later, we can poke fun at it. But there's nothing offensive about this. It's not a bad effect. It's not a bad model. It's just a dated model, and it looks what it is. It's a dated, cheap model, but there's nothing offensive about it.
It's still creepy though, because it's going.
It's clever the way they do it on the tram system because of the tram system being in the moorland. You don't, you're guessing. But you don't see it. It could be.
They use similar with K9 eventually on certain OB shoots and Souls of Blood, for example. K9 went on things, and Daleks in Destiny, the Daleks used tram tracks, so they learn from that too. But as I say, this is not a bad effect or a bad model. It's just a dated one.
Okay, but character effects could have done a little better on this. It looks like it's the Sontaran throne.
Well, Yeah, I mean, I personally think, John's eyesight, he's failed the Sontaran experiment because these are just toys, John. These are, I mean,
They used to. I remember years ago when they were closing down public lavatories in Glasgow. There was a move towards those automatic ones, which whizzed open, and you spent too long in there. So could we have seen Steyr on the Kazi? Perhaps have you not paid?
You might have
Knock
seen his,
on the door. One more minute.
Carry on up the Kazi.
you might have ended up seeing his probic vent. Oh God, we've just had an extraterrestrial landing, lads, and Michelle. Who is it this time?
Well,
Who is it?
they did say here in the U.S. we want to release the UFO files.
Oh,
So I
God.
mean,
Oh, who's this? Oh, it's an alien. It's Welsh. Oh, sorry. What?
Hello.
God, not you
well,
again.
Welsh might as well be an alien language.
So, what are you doing here?
Are you natives of the level 5 rock?
A level 5 rock? What the hell? Define a level 5 rock.
Well, level 1 is super sophisticated with sentient beings.
Okay.
Apparently, Yorkshire folk live there.
Oh, of course. Level 1 sophisticated Yorkshire.
Level 10, absolute thugs, Neanderthals. Like I think the planet's called Glasgow. Or
Level 10 Glasgow. I don't know if we're that bad. I mean,
far right today.
Hey, listen, I tell you what, the level 10 we're doing better than we did last year.
What level were you
know
last year, John?
there were you.
I've never gone to New Age crystals. I can never understand the meanings of them all.
So, what are you doing?
I'm here to assess your faculties.
Oh,
How dare you?
Specimen 1.
Oh yeah.
John,
Good luck with that.
John, I need
Yes.
to do the Sontaran experiment with you.
Yes.
You're
Go
ready?
then. Do this in attitude. Is that a dance?
Right,
I'm
I
ready.
need to check.
I'm ready.
How's your toilet in, John?
How's me what?
Your toilet in.
Regular.
Regular is it? Oh, that's good. I'm pleased
Yes.
with you.
Yeah.
Now, what about your reproductive tools?
Every time I look, there's more of them.
More felt.
You'll do for the Clone Wars.
Well, I think you passed the test, John. Well, I'm not sure. But
Can I just ask, because I've got skin in the game here. If John Specimen 1 failed the Sontaran experiment, what would happen to him?
Oh, I'll show you.
What would happen to him? Oh, John. I'm in tender hooks here.
You can tell by your face.
Whoa!
I
Nice.
failed the Sontaran test, and look what happened to me.
Oh,
Well, hold
And
on.
this is what happens when women take her makeup off. This is how
Is
it
this
really
a-
looks.
I'm not sure if this is a before or after of John. I'm not sure.
hold on. Is it, did you
Good
fail
after
the
you,
test?
John.
Yes. Did you fail the test?
I did indeed.
Oh, reduced to skin and bone.
Oh, well, you better clear off then if you
You
fail
know
the
what?
Yeah.
You really gotta stop the Ozempic right now.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Well, that was worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was entertainment.
Thank goodness you didn't script any of that.
Yeah, it really is
But you
important.
know what?
Hey.
Here's the thing, guys. We were still going to get higher ratings than Disney Plus Doctor Who.
Hey, Brendan.
The thing is, you have to remember what used to be entertainment, which was plate spinning. To this day, I'm still baffled by the very idea.
Brendan, that was
People tearing.
essentially British.
The Sontaran Experiment, my favourite two-parter. I think it may be a template for what came later on. I think we've all got probably one of these DVD covers. All the collections you do. But the ratings, what do you reckon to the ratings? My God, I mean, it just shows you. I think season 12 really was rocking.
RTD would cry to his bank every he got those ratings again.
Yeah. But so did Doctor Who at the time. I mean, even Doctor Who, later classic Who would have given its IT for ratings of that as well. But the point is, you make good stuff, they will come and they will watch. You know, it's as simple as that. And this is, you look at Joe Pertwee started with about 7 or 8 million. We were looking at the Autons, 8 million. So John Pertwee built an audience, which Tom Baker inherited and maintained, and to a certain degree built on too. So this was quality stuff they were producing back then. So people watched it. And when it tailed off and it wasn't as good, it lost audience. There's nothing scientific about this. Make good product, people will watch it. Don't make good stuff, people won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue about it moving to Tuesdays and Thursdays and the effect that was, but I think again, you look at those numbers, and as John says, that's built up from what was there previously.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, it's extraordinary that what we're talking about is a story that's stuck in between two absolutely fabulous stories, iconic stories.
I still am convinced you could get numbers closer to that now if they played their cards right. I really do. I really do.
I think you're sort of like, if you were getting on a Saturday night something similar to Strictly, which is what you're aiming for, that's the number that you're looking at is something similar to Strictly.
Especially Saturday night's a captive audience. People want to sit in if they're not going out, or they can't afford to go out, or it's too cold to go out. There's an audience there, and Strictly still pull, even 20 years on, Strictly's pulling 7 or 8 million people. The Traitors just off, pulling in 11. Michael McIntyre has a new Saturday night show, and he's pulling in 5 million plus. That shows you that there's an audience there if you can still capture it. The point was, Doctor Who anymore can't, because it just isn't good enough.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of remind ourselves of this, it was possibly going to be called The Destructors. When they changed the title to the Sontaran Experiment, Bob Baker and Dave Martin were furious, give it away. I still don't know why quite they did that, actually.
It does spoil the episode 1 cliffhanger, which is a banger of a cliffhanger. So it does spoil it. You can just imagine what we'd all feel like had we not known. It would have been beautiful.
Yeah. This was actually the second story recorded for Tom. Second story in history of Doctor Who to be shot completely on location, this time Dartmoor, and entirely on videotape. Famously, as we know, he broke his collarbone on the scarf, handily hiding the neck brace. Glyn Jones, who plays Kranz, wrote the Space Museum too. A few other things is we didn't get to see Nelson's column, and that's the plan. Baker and Martin wanted to pay homage to Planet of the Apes and do that. I don't think it would have been worth it, really, let's be honest.
Although, I'm sorry to interrupt again, they ended up being able to do that in one of the DVD extras of the Sontaran Experiment.
Yeah.
They do that, which is nice.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you think, nice touch, as in, but for the money they're paying in those days, it wasn't necessary. I mean, that's the location you're dealing with. I feel like Wuthering Heights almost coming on. And clever move by. I mean, we come to Criterion 2 later. The director Rodney Bennett made a decision, all videotape, better on editing. I actually think. I'll be honest with you, I watched it again yesterday, and I'd watched it again the week before. I think it looks as though it could fit on telly now because it's on video.
Mm-hmm. It looks better than Latter Day Classic Who, which is also filmed on OB, which looks cheaper. I mean, I'll get this right here. I don't want to make some Doctor Who sounding cheap. But when Doctor Who was made on film, principally, it had the look of all BBC dramas at the time. When in the final column, Make a Trial of a Time Lost season, it moved to OB, or I said broadcast, it looked like live TV. It looked like soap operas looked then. And so to that extent, it looked a little bit more homespun, a little bit cheaper, if you like. Whereas this, which was, if you like, 10 years earlier and more, it just looked far more... It just looked as had a bit of money spent on it, and it suited the soundscape that's also created in this as well. It just suits the bleakness that you get within the Dartmoor location that they use for this. Super.
Well, I'm not going to do a new segment called Health and Safety Watch, but when you watch the actors in this, they wouldn't be allowed to do it today. You just know that the ledges, even the climbing on the rocks, I doubt it would be allowed now.
And not just that, but Kevin Lindsay with his heart condition and that thing.
Yeah.
Comes down in one scene where the guy's tied to the thing, and he comes down. How the man managed it is beyond belief. And more the point was that they let him do it, particularly after Sontaran had already broken his collarbone.
Am I mistaken, or is there actually a picture of Kevin Lindsay in his new Sontaran costume with a cigarette in his mouth?
I think I've got some photographs, but remember, he sadly did die that year, didn't he? 1975. So I mean, it's it's sad because I think they all thought of him really highly, didn't they? I know they loved him in the Time Rory, and that they talked about him. And wasn't he Kevin Lindsay in Planet of the Spiders, wasn't he?
He was Choji, but he's never. All these years later, he has never been better as a Sontaran. And that's not to me being nostalgic. He just nailed the character, and it has never been better.
There's never been a better Sontaran, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
He was fantastic.
Well, now they're into comical characters.
Go on, Rochelle.
The Sontarans have now been turned into a comical character. I mean, if you want to have Strax being the off-ball Sontaran, that's fine. But then to have every Sontaran after that to be comical. No, they're supposed to be these scary warrior race who views everybody as beneath them.
Yeah.
And I will.
Damn you, Moffat.
I will do an item in a moment on the Sontarans because I think it's worthy, because already, as we know, they've changed from Lynx. I mean, they've already changed when you see them in this. And there's a moot point about whether that's worked. So time for our Time Eddie. Now, shout your own your versions here, because I must admit, at first I thought I can't see anything, but then actually it did start to stir. And yeah, why am I showing? There's a lot together. There's a lot from season 12, I have to say, because similar directors, Roger Murray Leach, blah, blah, blah. Sarah and Harry were set up to be tortured by Davros, as in about episode 4. And to be honest, it's a very similar vibe going on in Sontaran Experiment with Sarah being tortured. And, Davros said, I can bring out your worst fears. And I thought, oh, well, that's a similar vibe going on there. Android Invasion, I'm calling that one out in a way because, you just had a sense of emptiness. And I have to say, the location in Dartmoor, you got this they wanted it to be bleak, didn't they, and empty. And I thought, well, yeah, this is when Doctor Who can do it. I've got Revenge of the Cybermen. I know that's season 12 as well, but, the rockfall with Harry and the Harry falling again, into the trap. I don't know. There were a lot of things where I thought, to be honest, I've called it out in Nuwho. There are some similar plot devices going on, but I
think it's interesting that you have what is probably the clearest Nazi allegory in terms of Genesis of the Daleks coming up, and you obviously have what looks like Dr. Mengele in this.
Yeah. Very true. I mean, that's why it's so sadistic. I mean, really, the whole plot is I'm just going to do experiments on people.
Yeah, and they're fairly useless experiments. And then obviously in terms of torture and in terms like that, I think of Vengeance on Varos.
Yeah, and a different level of sadism from Syl. I've got Brain of Morbius here because, in episode 2, the Fourth Doctor said, he's not acclimatized to Earth's gravity, so I'm going to fight him. I'm going to wear him down. And there was a similar philosophy with Morbius. If I get him, he's not hardwired up there. If I get him in a bad temper, chop Stewie, the Galactic Emperor, I'll make his fuse go. So I've got a sense of that. And yes, I know it's Baker and Martin, but it's that astronaut thing. I don't know. They seem to like these lost astronauts, Bob Baker and Dave Martin. Did they do Underworld as well? I'm trying to think.
They did, yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Just a sense of it. It's Doctor Who after all. Just change the costumes, put a nice bit of a.
I mean, they're very into these huge concepts that, in general, are too big for the show to do. But actually, with this, it works because of the restriction of it of what the story has to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, too right, too right.
Well, that's my big love for Doctor Who. Even if it's outside the scope, give it a try. They'll do it anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an adventurous
That's what I
show.
like
It's supposed
about
to
it.
be.
And of course, at Dartmoor, Terror of the Zygons, there's a, you know, you can see similar settings and all the rest of it. So, you know, I had my little kind of element there. So that was just kind of, did anyone else have any kind of thoughts on?
Yeah,
Just in terms of that exhausting the character, not so much a Doctor Who, but Star Trek Arena,
Okay.
where Kirk
Oh,
tries to exhaust
Arena.
the Gorn.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I do. Yes, yeah, I know what you mean now. What were you going to say, John?
Yeah, I think more importantly in terms of Doctor Who is the fact that Robert Holmes revisits the whole scorched earth thing in Mysterious Planet. So this, you know, and the Doctor does mention in this Trafalgar Square could be over there or whatever
Yeah.
London landmark he refers to, and he returns to that when he writes. He's script editing this, but he returns to that when he writes Mysterious Planet later on. So that fits in with Robert Holmes' chronology of the Earth's existence.
Well, since we really are starting to delve into the Sontaran Experiment now, and we've had a few little nuggets mentioning it, but let's do the question: how high a level was the fear factor in it? Okay, so the fear factor. Start with you, Hugh. I mean, recalling it at the time. I mean, fear factor wise, where would you score it?
I think it's quite difficult because it's a story that isn't based on huge amounts of jeopardy, but it is based on quite a lot of violence, quite a lot of threat, but in a very small level. So although it's the Earth that's being dealt with, there's a few people on it, and there's a mad Sontaran who appears to be completely adrift from the rest of the Sontarans, which is odd for a clone race, but it is very, very dark for Saturday evening television for kids at that time. I look back on it now, and I'd be fairly uncomfortable with having torture scenes like that now.
Torture scenes like that and death. I mean, that man died.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
Australian was dead. You know, and they went there, just checked his face out. Oh, he's dead. Oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
But I suppose we did Kinder recently, and of course, the other thing was, did you see the Mara? No. Did you see that dodgy snake that appeared as a kind of scary? Yeah. Anyway, Michelle, fear factor. First time you saw it, I know
Yes, it is my first time to seeing it, and you know what? As a kid, you would have found this profoundly creepy with the thing coming after. You know, so I think it does have that creep factor, and I'll give it good points for it.
Yeah, and John, I don't know if me and you are the same. That moment we mentioned the cliffhanger. That moment when she goes Lynx, and you had the fear because it was only a year or so earlier, wasn't it, that we saw Lynx, and the same thing about pulling the helmet off. And for me, that was the scariest moment. Seeing that spaceship going, I know that.
Yeah.
And then seeing him, and then thinking, "Oh my God, it's him again." I don't know. I don't know where it took your mind.
I don't know if I found that scary even at the time, but I certainly found it exciting and exhilarating because it is, like I said, a great cliffhanger. We might come to that later. I don't know, but yeah, that's good. In terms of the fear factor, to relate it back to something I said earlier, it's the atmosphere of this. It's it manages to make, despite the lack of budget, despite the lack of time being able to spend and dress the location and all these sort of things, you get a real sense that these people are alone on a barren planet. It has a real sense of isolation, desolation, and that is unsettling. So the fear factor here for me is that the future of our planet? And that's very unsettling. And that's what does it for me, more so than any hints of violence or sadistic things that Lynx does to his captives. It's the whole feeling, atmosphere, sound suite, all of that piece. It really hits. And that's all thanks, I think, to a great production team led by the director.
I mean, Brian, you mentioned Kevin Lindsay, and I have to say the two performances with Kevin Lindsay in, The Sontaran scares me. His movement is so agile, and he really does look as though he wants to take out the Doctor. When that Sontaran is angry, the only other time I've seen a bit of that is in the Two Doctors, when the Troughton Doctor was trying to get a rise out of the military tactician that was the Sontaran. I just think the Sontaran for me is one of the scariest monsters you can have. It really is.
Absolutely. Excuse me, if done right. Sorry about that. Absolutely. Kevin Lindsay, when I was a child, I hadn't seen The Time Warrior. I was just one season too late. So for me, when I saw that ship, I didn't even know what it was. And when the door opened and Sarah says lynx, I didn't even know what that meant. So I started thinking of an animal, or I hadn't a clue what it was. But as to what John was saying, they did an excellent job of portraying a world that was totally barren. With a lot of films, a lot of TV shows, even modern ones today, it's always like, look off in the distance and very carefully, you'll be able to spot a truck or a car driving down the road. Something like that's anachronistic. And there may be something in there, but I never saw it. And it was so well done.
When I was watching that two-parter and, the video element, and I was thinking about it, and I just thought, Blake Seven used to try and do a lot of outside broadcast. I have to say, Blake Seven did a lot of it. And for me, as a Doctor Who first, they never quite carried off, I thought, the sci-fi on outside broadcast. It always looked very flimsy. I thought this production, even that contraption that was capturing them, it was well executed. And I actually thought that's what carried it. Much more than sometimes you see a Blake Seven and you can tell they're just in some valley with a stream and there's a very dodgy contraption in the corner. You see, I think this really worked for 75. Unbelievable.
And also,
just in terms of another connection, because of thinking about it here, given that it's shot on Dartmoor, there's a hint, obviously, of the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
Or just in terms of being chased by that and falling off things, which happens in the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
Also, for an American, Dartmoor and that heath and that moorland, that looks very alien because we don't really have that in the United States. That's very, those rocks and that heath and the grouse or gorse or wherever you say it. It's just very foreign to us.
And do you know what? It's almost like blooming playing hide and seek with a neighbor that could, in the 70s, if the neighbors caught you, if you were playing a knock-a-door run, they would smash your head against the concrete road sign. So the jeopardy was higher than any Doctor Who now. So basically, the fear factor when you saw Harry, hidden behind a rock, and he could just glimpse the Sontaran in the distance, and you thought, oh my God, if he comes this way, he's going to... It's so easy. It's just hide behind a rock, and the peril and the tension for me was very high on those moments. So I was going to ask you, everybody, the other question, which is, since they were playing on the Lynx link, I was disappointed, I'll be honest with you, that the Sontaran has evolved. This was the best, and I think is still the best mask and version of a Sontaran that ever has been. And I was I understand Kevin Lindsay's breathing was obviously more important and they had to change the mask. The mouth changed and everything. But if we were just talking about aesthetically and what scares kids, I was disappointed. What do you reckon, Hugh?
Yeah, I think it's less noticeable at the time because you don't have videos, you don't have the repeats that you would have now. And the difference whenever you see it, one after the other, which I've done, is quite substantial. And I think that that original Time Warrior design is beautifully done, and again must have cost buttons.
Yeah, beautiful,
fantastic.
It is when you see the version and then you see how it changed. Their complexion has completely changed. But I have to say, I understand, Kevin Lindsay, you've got to look after your actor, and
he's
in the end,
he's doing the tongue thing. He's got to show that tongue.
That tongue was brilliant. He does it again here, doesn't he? He does it. There's a moment when he's torturing somebody and that tongue comes out. I haven't really seen stuff like this really done properly since. And so, it was great to see that. Do you know what? When I look through, you know, the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Ice Warriors, the Yeti, they're normally called the Big Five. I dare say you'd put the Weeping Angels up there now if you were mentioning Nuwho. I think deep down, if they're done right, and I know Two Doctors, Invasion of Time, you know, and other haven't done it right. I actually do think these are the best monster in Doctor Who really to work on, and only with one. I think Time Warrior and Sontaran Experiment work for a reason, I personally think. What do you think, John?
Oh yeah, you're spot on. The Sontaran should be singular. There should be one Sontaran should do the job. But I'm not going to. I agree with everybody about the Lynx mask. Yeah, certainly it was the best. First one's always your best one usually. But in comparison to what came after the Sontaran Experiment, I can't criticise the Star Mask because it's still way better than what we got years later, either Invasion of Time or the Two Doctors or even in Nuwho. You know, so while it's not as good, it's still, as far as I'm concerned, worn by the original Sontaran Kevin Lindsay, and I would take Lynx and Star over anything else represent themselves as Sontarans that came later on.
Yeah. So yeah, there's the Sontaran. I just, it was a lovely little story that he just needed to sound out one military thing and get on with that. It was interesting when I read the notes that Robert Holmes had sat down Bob Baker and David Martin for 3 hours to tell them all about the Sontaran history, their sex life,
the reproduction.
Yeah.
They did, yeah.
Well, we were asking your sex life tonight, obviously.
Sontarans After Dark.
Well, that's why we did on our Sontaran Experiment ask John about his reproductive tools, because that's what they were finding out.
And we discovered
what happens on the moor stays on the moor.
So, okay.
When it comes to my sex life, that's the word, more.
Right. I don't know. We've got there. I think it's the puppets. I'm blaming the puppets.
That's more than I want to know.
So basically, criteria 1, true who or boo who, but you know, within that, you can tell us your most enjoyable moments or dialogue or whatever, you know. It's one of those where you can use it how you want in your scoring. So, Hugh, on this one, when you think of Sontaran Experiment, what do you want to reflect on?
I mean, I think as we've covered earlier, that it being a two-parter then was a bit of a strange thing. It was an experiment, but it just fits in so well with that season. It's well done. You know, Harry and Sarah, Ian Martin and Liz Sladen are just great. I mean, that's as good as it gets with companions. Yeah, it's the playoffs are brilliant. Yeah, it's a trifle unusual, but it's still absolutely true.
I really enjoyed the interplay with Harry and Sarah, Harry and the Doctor. And because it's in the Revenge of the Cybermen, it's an arc in space. He really doesn't like Harry, does he? In a way. And it's so testy. I love it. It just seemed to make that TARDIS crew so authentic. And Sarah, obviously, you saw it in Revenge, put me down. She likes to hold her own. And there's moments in this. A great TARDIS crew. And so to me, this was as close as I feel as though we've been to then the original crew, when that felt so authentic as well.
The bit where Liz Sladen pulls the hat down over her face, and I'm just thinking, that's like Felicity Kendall.
Yes,
it's that type of joking. It's the type of joking between Felicity Kendall and Richard Briers in The Good Life.
There is yes, if anyone hasn't seen The Good Life, if you're in another part of the world or something, there is a scene, isn't it? An exact same scene, I would have thought. I mean, John, what would you want to pick out of Sontaran Experiment regarding True Who, Boo Who, and whether it fulfills everything we want as a Doctor Who fan?
Just everything we've already said, basically. We've just the atmosphere in this is the winning point for me, because it's the way it's shot, the way it's filmed, the way the incidental music, everything is just superb. But to go to the script for a second, if I may, what you have here is you have the Doctor, 2 companions, and there are at least 2, possibly 3 sort of other characters who have a substantial part in this. and they all get the moment, they all get something to do. And you flash back to a few years during the Jodie Whittaker era when you've got people standing around with nothing to do, nothing to say, nothing to contribute. And it just shows you that no matter how much money, no matter how much you're paid, that if you have a gifted writer and a gifted script editor producing the goods, that's all you need to produce good stories and to make sure that your characters live and breathe and have 3 dimensions. And that doesn't happen through a lot of new Who. So that's why old Who will always win out so far with me, because they don't have the money to spend bangs and flashes. So everything goes into the script, and as a result of that, into the story and the characters.
I mean, Brian, this is only the second recording for Tom Baker, and in many ways, it's a very poetry one because of all the action. You know, the fight scene. It's like Curse of Peladon. How many poetry fight scenes did you have where the Doctor gets combative? And I know it was the stunt, it was Stuart Fell and Terry Walsh, but the point was the Doctor was fighting the Sontaran. You don't get that much in New Who at all. They talk it out or reset. But so to me, that was another thing I really liked. The Doctor's in charge. He's heroic, and he'll have a fight at the end, just like Pertwee would. What did you do like this Sontaran Experiment? I know you told me. So what are you picking out as the gems that make it so Doctor Who?
Well, I think it just gets off to a great start because we have, for instance, a story that doesn't have the TARDIS, and when they all appear in that circle, and it's obviously malfunctioning, right away that introduces a bit of a what kind of trouble could they get into with this? Are they going to be able to get back out? Like right away, they've introduced something new, something different, and something that could potentially cause a problem for them later. And they did a great job with Roth hiding at the top of the hill amongst the rocks and catching Sarah's eye. And when we talked about seeing that Sontaran ship, it's amazing what music can do. Because when Liz turns to the ship and says, "Links," and then you hear that electronic music starting at a lower register and then building up. And just as he comes out of the ship and pulls off that mask, you get that sting and then roll credits.
I mean, I know it's partly Criteria too, but it's the way we talk. I mean, Dudley Simpson at this period. I mean, there's a lot of music in this one that's so similar to what's in Genesis. There's a nice, similar tone, and oh god, there's some musical touch. I mean, the music isn't dominant in this one, but the moments.
That's the point, Brendan, that about the atmosphere. I think that's what gives those scenes across the moorland, the desolation, their impact, because there isn't music. The composer knows when not to place music on something, so you got a real sense of emptiness when it stands across those, Whereas nowadays, I dare say, Murray Gold would be pumping it out like nobody's business.
Yeah, well, you could even hear the wind. You had the wind. You had that wild. It was, like I said, it was very Wuthering Heights in that way. It was very moody. Michelle, your thoughts on what makes it? Was this classic Who for you?
Oh, of course, it's classic Who. It's classic Who at its best. We have, I love the interactions between Sarah and Harry, and I love she's getting on him for "don't call me old girl" or that thing. I love that, and the Doctor like, "Oh, just go have fun over there. Piccadilly Circus is that way."
Mm-hmm.
I'm just noticing everything that, like what Sarah wears here and what actually Harry wears here. I've noticed in New Who, as in season 1, the Doctor's worn both those outfits actually, but in different colors.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I think RTD is watching this period a lot more, actually. We know he obviously aped Pyramids of Mars. I do think this period is his as well. Yes, I can't knock this one on.
To be fair, it sort of must be, because as I've mentioned before whenever we did the RTD thing, Brendan, he's exactly a year older than I am.
Yeah.
So it's like I think in terms of watching it, I think you get into Who fairly young, but the peak period is probably 10 to 12, something like that, 10 to 13.
Yeah.
And that's when you get to see it, and you have still the ability to be childlike, but you also get to appreciate some of the other aspects to it.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to hear yourself and Hugh talk about if Russell Davis has paid attention at the minute to this era of classic Who. And being the television professional he is, all he can take away from it is a duffel coat and a yellow Mac. That's very, very sad. Perhaps if he went a bit more for the characterization, the storytelling, the atmosphere that these people are producing on a minuscule budget, depend, I guess, what they've got now, then Doctor Who might be in a better state. But never mind. We'll take a duffel coat. That's good. Good old.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
12 duffel coats and Macs.
well, like I said, the TARDIS crew seemed a lot more authentic because they weren't technically getting on perfectly. Whereas the Millie Gibson, Ruby Sunday Doctor arc seemed to be, RTD said their chemistry's amazing. And they kept saying in some of the early episodes of season 1, we get on amazing. And by the end of the season, he's crying because he's going, I got on with her amazing. And it's like, but
the best thing ever. Best thing ever. Until the next thing, which is also the best thing ever. And the one after that is even better than that.
Yeah, whereas when Sarah Jane Smith left, you just got that little moment in the TARDIS when you saw a look from Tom Baker's Doctor and you go, he will miss her. But it was not even... Yeah, I mean... And that's all it needed. This laying everything on your sleeve and saying, without you, I cannot grow as a person and all that stuff. Meanwhile, get on with the action. That's what the kids want. Just do it, will you? So I think it's passed well on the criteria 1. So we will move on, but I think we need to kind of keep our viewers happy. And one of the items they do like us to do, because they never know what we're going to say, is, of course, it's your favorite and mine. It's the what would Shooty do? Yeah, well, what would he do? Sometimes I wonder if does he know what he's doing. So, first taxi on the ranking. I'll go a bit bigger. My thoughts were, and the Doctor actually thought he knew what he was doing, and he did actually fall into that same thing, pit. Well, he's trying to get a big branch there to get out, but I thought actually the Shooty Doctor would have said Mavity, wouldn't he? He'd have said Mavity. Mavity would have been the solution to it all. When you're writing a tight 2-parter, the Doctor goes down where Harry was, Harry fell. Did you think that was maybe a loose bit of the script? I mean, I'm very strict on these things. I thought you've repeated almost the same thing twice now as Peril. Isn't
that the joke though? In terms of this, because you get the Doctor going, this is silly, and then does exactly the same thing. So it's undercutting it. I mean, yes, I think to that extent that's something that gets carried on with Russell Davis and Stephen Moffat to an extent that sometimes they do their joking. But again, this is so tight in this 2-parter that the joke's gone and it's then Jeopardy and it's done properly.
I mean, a similar cutting them down was when he tells Harry about cluttering and then he throws that thing that saved his life, that bit of metal. Yeah. And
he says, and never throw anything away, Harry. And then the sentence later says, never clutter your pockets. So it's lovely, beautifully done. That's all Robert Holmes. I guarantee you, that's Robert Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of Robert Holmes in this.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's that understanding that helps it work.
Now, if I show you this one, I mean, my thoughts, John, when I was watching this was you sometimes hear of these dodgy establishments. And I just wonder if the Shooty Doctor would have thought, oh, gosh, I might pop in here. I might discover somebody. I might find some, I don't know. I was just thinking the Shooty Doctor might
be there shouting, rogue.
Yes, yeah.
Rogue.
This is where he was at during all 73 yards.
Yes, I think the Shooty Doctor would be down that
They're not holding it.
Yes,
it's dark, it's damp, it's moist. He's going.
like a rabbit up a trap.
So sorry. This one was, of course, the moment when it looked as though Sarah might be dead. And the fourth Doctor turns, and the anger, and he was going to wipe out that Sontaran in that moment. And I have to say, to be fair, it was a good moment. But and that, you see, that's when you see how much Sarah meant to him, because he really lost it. Shooty's Doctor does do that. He gets very fired up and say dot and bubble or shouts at Suit. So there is an element where I'm saying, to be fair, the Shooty Doctor might have done a similar thing here. Except I'm wondering, am I being too fair with him? I don't know if the Shooty Doctor would attack a villain. I've not
No.
been...
No, he hasn't been given that chance yet to be
No.
the Doctor
I
and
think-
have a fight.
I think he would try to reason with it, and if he couldn't convince the alien to change its ways, then he would probably just start crying and banging his fists against the wall, saying,
Yeah.
why, and then leave.
You've missed out a why. But
Why?
I mean, Sarah maybe being dead, so I'm sorry, I'm taking you out, Steyer, is almost like in Dot and Bubble, the white supremacists have won, and then he says, for a prize, I'm going to give you a barren planet. I mean, you know, that's the difference there, which is, there was no sympathy from the Shooty Doctor at that. Sorry, there was sympathy from the Shooty Doctor. There wasn't from the Tom Baker Doctor. Let me get my order right. I loved the scene though. I loved it when the Doctor lost it. Now this one, I'm being cheeky here. When you saw the dialogue, the fourth Doctor was saying, "I'm a chronometrist. I just love clocks, wall clocks, grandfather clocks, cuckoo clocks." I think if it was the 15th Doctor, I'd be wondering if I was hearing that word exactly as I thought it was on the script. Just saying.
What do you mean? I'm not getting this. What do you mean?
Cuckoo.
Is it something like cuckoos?
Pops out every hour.
I think
I'm not getting this. You'll have to spell it out, Brendan.
I'll spell it out. I'll give you an example, John. I think the 15th Doctor might like an atomic cock. No. I do.
I was about to say, is it what sort of like we're talking about one hell of a difference?
Yeah.
I'm
So-
not asking.
I'm now intrigued by the whole idea of a quartz cock, but there we are.
No. I've got a one-track mind here. Trouble is with the Shooty Doctor, I think he has as well. But there's this moment. I mean, there's the Sontaran torturing a human, but that looks like this could be the Rogue and Shooty again.
Yes, yeah, just looking for the nearest bush. Looking for the nearest bush.
Yes.
Or I'll rephrase that.
I'm just thinking he's gone through the gay nightclub now where all those twigs were,
Right.
and now he's found his man, and now off they go. I mean, am I getting the 15th Doctor right? I think I am. I bet the
Unfortunately,
fourth.
Again, the problem every time we do this is it's not Shooty's fault. It's Rutter's fault. It's the writer's fault on this.
There is actually a good clip of Shooty in The Importance of Being Earnest, and somebody actually says this is one of the best acting he's ever done because he's actually having some very subtle humor and being allowed to kind of act and to do something different. It's actually a very interesting clip of him being in The Importance of Being Earnest.
But to be honest, he's got Oscar Wilde helping him there. You know,
It shows what he could do with a good writer.
Yeah.
I've said this before.
That's my point. He's got Oscar Wilde behind him, feeding him the lines and him to bring his acting skills through. At the minute,
a good writer and director.
He's now portraying a character 60 years in, who the lead writer and showrunner has decided he's going to make gay, flirtatious, emotional, all the things this character never was before. So he's up against it. Or he will
Worst of all,
come season 2.
but worst of all, I don't really care what the Doctor is as long as he's alien, and he's not.
Yeah. Whereas he's obviously into clocks. Yes, I said clocks. And on this one, I was wondering if the shooty doctor, looking at all these big silver orbs, might have just said, "I've seen balls
You
bigger
really
than
are.
that."
Clocks and orbs.
It kind of looks like the out front of a Target in the United States.
Yeah, I think the
Clocks
15th.
and orbs.
Yes, I think the 15th Doctor was thinking, "Enjoy to the world." When I kept going to that gay nightclub every night, when Anita thought I was doing the plumbing, that's what I was. Yeah, I think.
Wasn't he though, Brendan? Wasn't he?
Oh, he definitely was. That's the scene you were talking about, of course,
That's
the good
Phyllis.
life moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's this. That may even be the same outfit that Felicity Kendall wears in The Good Life, because she wears the yellow top and bottom to slip in the mud.
Yes. What's her face? Yes, Margot. Yeah.
Margot does. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks so similar. But the banter between them is very similar, and I think to be fair, I think that's what Russell is going for.
Yeah.
With Ruby Sunday and Shooty, but I don't think it's as well written.
But if you turned it from yellow to orange and it's 73 yards, I think the Shooty Doctor has actually got that because he has grabbed it. And then the final one, which was the fight scene with the Sontaran. And I suppose what I'm saying is, I mean, we had the King's Demons earlier. I mentioned Grun and John Pertwee's Doctor. I don't think we're ever going to see this 15th Doctor do anything that we would call old-fashioned combat or fight scene.
Well, surely this would be a twerk-off.
Yeah, they're facing each other. They should actually turn around. It'll be like a gunfight at the OK Corral, but you turn the other way.
A bun fight.
Yeah, here we go again. You bun-fighted Brenda, or whatever it is.
If you recall, when they brought back Doctor Who in 2005, I believe they had a no blood rule, which I think they may have broken occasionally. But now with this new series, it's almost inconceivable the Doctor would even get into a physical altercation.
As you can tell with the clock thing, sometimes my hearing's dodgy. Did you say they have a no blood rule or it's no good rule?
No blood. I believe it too. No.
That too. Like,
yeah, they have that too. They have that too.
It's a game. Let's produce the worst possible script. And
so
definitely have that too.
So thank you for that. Criteria 2, which obviously is just in case we've left somebody out, and obviously production values and all that sort of stuff. So direction, music, set, costume, it's up to you on how you want to score it and what you want to bring up that maybe we haven't mentioned before. John, your thoughts on this one? Because I know what we've said about outside broadcast video now. Is there anything that we haven't said yet that we need to kind of include?
No, I've covered most of it for this one. But can I just briefly go back to the last one? Because there's one thing we didn't mention, and I think it's a failing in this season. It's the lack of TARDIS. Now, that was a conscious choice they made for whatever reason. So you get it at the beginning of the Ark in Space, and you don't get it again to the end of Revenge of the Cybermen. So you have a brand new Doctor, and this speaks to the quality of Tom Baker and his two companions at the time, who are able to carry this without the trappings of familiarity throughout the entirety of the season. There's no police box. There's no interior. There's not an interior of the TARDIS until Planet of Evil, a couple of stories into the next season. So that speaks to the quality of the writing and the acting in this, that they're able to make this still seem like Doctor Who, while at the same point some of the trappings aren't there. You don't have Pertwee anymore. You don't have Joe Grant anymore. You've got Sarah Jane Smith, who's your familiar character, but you don't have Nicholas Courtney. He's all gone. They've all gone now. And yet here we are, still very much true to Doctor Who. But if I want to speak at all about criteria 2 in this, it will be the use of Dudley Simpson's music. We mentioned before his in our Terror of the Autons review how he's using the electronic side of this, and it's all a bit much. It can wash all over you. Dudley's now gone to an orchestra now, or a very sport orchestra, and he can really punch out those moments, really, and make them matter. More to the point, as we mentioned earlier, he knows when not to have music, which is just as powerful. But to go back to what Brian said earlier, the end of episode 1, the combination of the sound effects provided by Dick Mills, the music provided by Dudley who ramps that up towards the end, and then the original Ron Grainer theme and Sting coming in just works magically to create not just a good moment, but a magical Doctor Who moment. And one of those, while Sontaran Experiment may not be anybody's favourite in terms of Doctor Who story, that will always rank as one of those cliffhangers, which has all those component parts just to make it classic.
But just to add to that, I don't think it would be as good if Liz Sladen wasn't as good at acting the fear for Links as well. So it's that whole package.
Classic.
She sells it so. Anybody else could fold that in and just stood there and allowed everything else to do it. She's, and in a minute, just saying that word Links, the whole horror of that first adventure with the Doctor comes flooding back to her.
It's not even. We can talk about good writing or bad writing, but it's not. It doesn't have to be good writing. She's given one word to say, and it's just her delivery of it. Yeah. You could just go.
Quality.
You could just go Links. But she does. Liz Sladen always did something I didn't see many of the actresses do. She had this kind of. She could really seem troubled and vulnerable in how she delivered that line. It was very.
And also, shortly after that, when Roth is killed by Steyer, she turns and the way she punches out the word murderer twice.
Yes.
The absolute contempt that this creature has taken this man's life, a man who's just helped her, is so wonderfully done. Now, that line didn't have to be there, and she didn't have to give it as much kudos as she does, but it's fabulous. Far better than you would get in any other kids program at the time. It really matters.
But what you're picking out, then it's clearly Criterion too. It's a selection of the blooming actors. I mean, it's a repetition of that word that you've just called out. When she says murderer the second time, which, if you think about it, now you get a speech, and not just RTD, but I think a lot of them think. Yeah, but she's given two words to say, but the way she does it, the first one and then the second one, is different. And it just shows you.
The first one, Brendan, is shock. The second one is contempt.
Yeah.
For what this thing has done to this other living, not just a man she doesn't know from Adam, but a man who's taken time to save her life and befriend her in this hostile environment. And that second word, it shows how wonderfully she knew her craft, Liz Sladen, how she just put so much into that. Oh my goodness, what a loss.
I did want to know when the Sontaran lands on this barren planet and luckily finds a few humans that are left, he learns the word moron and worm very quickly because
I thought the same thing.
Probably heard the other guys going, you moron, now we're on some desert planet.
I know. I think at school we were told off if we used the word moron, but yeah, there was moron.
Can't use that word now.
He doesn't find these guys, he lures them there.
Yeah.
They're Galsic, they are lured to the planet by Links.
Again, there's a nice selection of actors who play the secondary roles. It's well done, and it's an interesting idea to have them as South African.
Yeah. It was something about the vowels, wasn't it? That Bob Baker and Dave Martin wanted to show that the future planet, the language will have stretched in different directions. Yeah, interesting point. So yeah, I mean, we've said the music, the choice of actors, the dialogue. I mean, Roger Murray Leach didn't have much to do in one respect. He's done his Nerva Beacon, and it's interesting that he's on this one. But the choice of setting, and I do think, I have to say, I'd love to go and visit this place. And there's not many Doctor Who locations I actually really want to go to. And I have to say, this choice is so much better than whoever chose the Eye of Orion, which looked like a dodgy day in Wales, whereas this looked beautiful. It looked amazing.
And it's virtually unchanged, too.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But to have the height situation, there's some lovely shots where with the rocks, it's almost like Pride Rock. You've got that whole element. So I want to call
now somebody holding up a cat.
Yeah, the christening at the beginning. They wouldn't do a christening now. So yes,
I just think they hit the mark right off the bat. The spheres from the transmat, they looked obviously like they're just balls, but they looked in a sense they looked futuristic. The way they had rusted them up gave them the look that they've been there for a very long time, and they obviously need to be repaired. And there's little touches that some people may have noticed in Doctor Who, and this one did it beautifully. When Terry Walsh did his stunt and fell over the cliff, and the doctor goes down to check it and sees that he's broken his neck, and they say, "You've killed him." And then he looks up and says, "No," and they shoot him. It's not as though they just went into the studio and made a little laser gun fire. They actually went through the trouble of having an echo reverberate throughout the moors. If you listen to it carefully, you can hear it. It's not just you'll hear a you can hear it just echoing through the countryside. And I thought that was a really, really nice touch. They paid great attention to detail with that. The only thing that let me down really was the Sontaran ship exploding. I think that's the second time that's happened.
Yeah.
But costume-wise, yeah, I mean, is if only they could have replicated what they did with the Time Warrior. I think it just would have been top-notch. When Sarah was hallucinating and that kind of mud was being slowly crawling up her legs, I believe that looked like videotape in reverse, so it has a little bit of a jitter to it, but which gave it kind of a creepiness as well. That was fantastic. I mean, Sarah, if you want fear, Sarah Elizabeth Sladen is 100% your best choice for giving humor to fear to courage, like you were saying, and with the yelling murderer. She knows what this alien can do. She doesn't care. She's going to scream it at him anyway. Just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and of course she wasn't the classic companion of just screaming either. She was a fighter. She was independent. She had questions. I mean, she had a damn good range. I have to say, they just about carry it off production-wise regarding it was a very physical two-parter, and you've just lost your main actor with a broken collarbone. I mean, that must have really, they nearly carry it off.
Brendan, the thing about it was, at the time, Hinchcliffe didn't think he had just lost his main actor for this story. He thought he might have to recast the Doctor at this point. There was a point between Tom going to hospital and coming back to the hotel that evening where Hinchcliffe was having to think he might have to go and refilm what they'd already done, to recast and refilm. So it must have been an awful time for them. But thank goodness that never happened, and we were given 7 years of probably the best Doctor ever.
The best, well, and thank God for that. So we've delayed you getting your kit off. So it's time. What's
I'm still wearing it.
Oh, you're wearing your modesty shirt.
Yes, my long johns are on.
So obviously this is Michelle's favorite item, not because she's so appalled that season 2 has an intimacy coordinator in the Nuwho.
I got some questions.
Yeah, I do too. I'm wondering. Well, here we go. This is our intimacy watch, trying to be custodians of classic Who and making sure nobody's going to censor it in their replays of it. Now, Brian sent some in. I added some as well, so it'll be a blur in, Brian, I'm sure. But there's a lot of touching and feeling on this show, and I think the intimacy coordinator, Michelle especially, we would have to be very careful. We can't have any shenanigans, you know.
Yeah,
John Barron.
and be very careful where you keep your hands.
John
You're pulling
Barrowman
it
got
off.
blackballed, as he said, so we've got to be careful nowadays that you don't get struck off or
Even though they
cancelled.
laughed about it at the time and actually put it into a song for the end of the season, but we'll just collapse our pearls now.
Yeah, but and what's funny is now we're always looking at is there any sex or sleaze in it because of how Doctor Who is. No way. As we said, the way Sarah and Harry are with each other, not a chance in hell.
Mm-hmm.
Not a chance in hell. No, that it was there for the adventure. Of course, the Sontaran was fascinated by the female of the species. I feel a song coming on, and getting his grubby mitts on a woman, intimacy coordinator needs to be there. I think
That's a
You didn't
great
ask
shot.
me.
That actually, the dialogue there is quite. Now you would be wondering about it, but again, it's context and how it's done then.
Mhm.
So it's the very fact that you don't think of it whenever you watch it now is because it's not placed in your mind by the writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to rehearse this scene a couple of times, and Kevin's wearing a glove on his hand, so he's got to be very careful that when he touches her, maybe she even overreacts just to make sure that he doesn't push too hard, because that shot there is fantastic. The whole sequence is fantastic.
It could be very Anne Rice, very naughties with the Twilight stuff, I suppose. You could be going, right, I'm moving in for the neck. Here we go. But yes, that's another series, not to pick up. Now this one, you picked this one, Brian. I was thinking more. I was thinking, was it Edward II or Henry II? I always get mixed up. The one with the red hot poker. But yeah, Brian,
That's Henry II, isn't
Henry
it?
II, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
Henry
going to see that next month. I'm going to see that next month. Yes.
Oh, stay seated. Brian, you picked this, didn't you?
I did. It was a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor. Just these three guys here. Oh, they look like they're just up to no good. No good at all. I don't know if it would be more of an stunt coordinating than intimacy watch, but hey, you never know what these guys are up to. Look at those.
It's got to be above board nowadays. I mean, one of my shows recently, we were discussing Camille Kaduri talking about John Barrowman and Noel Clarke, and yeah, you've got to be very careful nowadays. We also have that one you picked.
I had to.
And why did you have to, Brian? Please tell a straight man to a gay man. What were you talking about?
I just thought it was funny, really.
It is.
You know what? I love Elizabeth Sladen so much, and when there were pictures of her on the screen earlier, I felt compelled to say she just looks beautiful. I don't mean that. I don't mean that in like a sexy way or something like that. Like people might look at Leela. When you see her, she's so good and wholesome, and just inside and out. It shows. But as far as this scene goes, her lying on her back with her legs in the air, I need not elaborate.
Yeah,
I think
Brian,
I'm done.
Brian. I think you. Send me your address. I'm gonna send my intimacy coordinator to your house. I think that's what's going on here.
I one time fell in the bush like that.
I don't think you want to do that.
I one time fell in the bush like that. So yeah, that moment where you're stuck is just like a little help here.
Yes, it can be quite awkward. The moors are dodgy places; they're quite dangerous. You were being naughty again here, Brian. You were saying there was a fetish for the was it
PVC? Yeah.
See?
You could have easily used this in the what would Shooty do? Because
yes,
Tom's already halfway there.
Yeah, you threw a real problem at me. I didn't know which version to put it in. I thought, well, it'll be in anyway. But yes, the shooty item could just be a 2-hour show sometimes because there's so many elements where you go, he's so different from actually classic Doctors.
But again, not his fault.
No,
I mean,
no.
By the way, everybody, this is not me. I might have been playing around with the clocks dialogue and the big orbs. And that's normally John's terrain, but we've got to remember we've got bondage, we've got kink, and I fancy the rocks off Liz Sladen. This is Brian. I mean,
It just goes to show how corrupt and influenced you are.
I know. It hasn't taken long, has it? Brian was easy to corrupt.
I was corrupted a long time ago.
Yeah, that's it. And of course, like I said, it was a touchy-feely show. I mean, thank God the main actor and the main female actor didn't have a thing, and they were just scallies from Liverpool who just respected each other. Yeah.
Mhm.
So if we're going to play fair here, we've got criterion 3, which is always the audience engagement. Whether you were engaged, whether you were happy with the resolution, was it good story writing? Have we mentioned everything? What's our judgment? So, is there anybody who wants to bring their kind of contributions to the game that something's not been said before, I suppose?
Just in terms of it following on from ARC, I mean, if someone was watching this just straight off as a one show, I do wonder whether they would understand what was going on. But I actually think it's very cleverly written for that you don't need to know so much.
Yeah.
And there's not an awful lot of exposition in it, but there's just enough exposition that you could follow. And given the fact that you've got to pack that in and do it in 2 parts, well, that's quite clever.
Yeah, I mean, my jokey bit, and I'll come to you, John, don't worry, that clocks bit is the exposition, really, because he explains that they've been, hibernating up there for 10,000 years. You just get that quick bit, don't you? And that's all you need if you missed Ark in Space. Go on, John. Sorry, what was it?
Yeah, I think this could be pretty much standalone. You could show somebody who doesn't see much Doctor Who about this, bar the one thing is the lack of the TARDIS. And the comings and goings, so they've come from one place, which anybody might not having seen this, know where they come from and where they're going to. But that's explained along the way. You can pick that up. But I think the lack of the TARDIS just stops this from being something you could show to someone and say, here's a nice wee 50-minute chunk of Doctor Who and all the component parts are there. Just that stops being able to sit somebody down and do that and show them off part without knowing much else about Doctor Who. But other than that, given the fact that it's a 2-parter, I agree with you. I think it's probably the best 2-parter that Doctor Who Ulster ever made. Probably closely followed, if not by Black Orchid, then certainly by The Rescue. But for me, this talks
I'll stick my hand up and say I prefer Edge of Destruction, but that's because of other aspects.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because you've met. I've never got a chance to come back as we moved on, John. But when you talked about the lack of TARDIS, it made me think that when we talk about setting a template and all the rest of it, but season 1. We have this really expensive TARDIS interior set, and we've hardly really used it at all in the whole of season 1. And it's interesting that even though they've now got a big budget and it's a hell of a size, this TARDIS, you just don't see it and they're not using it. And it's just interesting that this arc in season 12, the point you make, which is there wasn't much TARDIS at all. I just find it interesting whether...
I think the reason... They did. I just don't think. I think the set wasn't in good order. The police book itself eventually collapsed on top of Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen a season or so later. At the end of the Seeds of Doom, I think it was.
Yeah, that was one.
The choice is an odd choice for a new Doctor not to be seen with the familiar, tropes with that which makes Doctor Who the Doctor, and you've already lost the Brigadier and Unit and Joe. Sergeant Smith is there, the identity figure. So to take away the TARDIS seems like an odd choice. Having said that, looking back at it now, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But taking this as a standalone story, it just stops it from being something you'd be able to show to people as typical Doctor Who. Although, interestingly, a little bit of added extra, for those of us who were brought up with the Genesis of the Daleks cassette, which was our only chance of listening to old Doctor Who back in the day, in the late 70s, early 80s, that Tom Baker narrates missing parts of that, and they introduced the TARDIS into that. He talks about TARDIS landing. So they saw it as necessary as a means to sell this to people who may not be listening to this and not knowing of the season arc.
That's interesting.
There's over that anyway.
Yeah, no, that's true. That you almost take it for granted having listened to it so many times. It's just like, yeah. So, criteria 3, did it engage you? Happy with the resolution? Now, of course, the resolution is there's an arc. They don't get back to the TARDIS. There's a bit of a jokey bit at the end when, you know, they're coming and going. I mean, it does what it says on the tin. It's a Sontaran experiment. You get some good Sontaran action. I have to say, in this one and in the Time Warrior, that little effect with the Sontaran gun, it's a little kind of military baton, really, isn't it? They always do a close-up. You get the warm light. And I remember the moment, I think you remember the bit with John Pertwee in the metal fan quickly, you know.
Yeah.
I just think it just works for the Sontaran, and we got proper Sontaran action. The Sontaran military strategy thing almost made sense. I know there's a plot hole thing about, you know, whether, you know, there is an element about I'm trying to think what the plot hole was now. It kind of works to a degree.
Is that the one Tom Baker broke his collarbone when falling down it?
I'm trying to think what it was now. It's gone out of my head about the plot hole.
Well, to be honest, to have a completely barren planet, lure humans to it, just to do these little experiments, so now we know we can invade this galaxy and take over this planet, was kind of ludicrous in a way. It's redundant, actually, but it made for a great story.
You've got it, Brian. It wasn't entering my head, but yeah, we got there. That was it. That was the thing. So yeah, no, I was satisfied. I mean, there's only one cliffhanger. I do love my cliffhangers. I bore people rigid saying it, and that was a blooming good cliffhanger. Michelle, anything to bring to the party regarding criteria 3 that we haven't said?
No, I was happy with it. It's a blooming little 2-parter.
Yeah.
I'd quibble with the resolution. One thing would be and I think it's by virtue of the fact that it's made on location, but it's not clear exactly what happens to Steyr. We've taken a bit of his kit away, obviously, and he goes into his spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, he comes out clutching his probic vent, or I think that's what he's clutching when he emerges. It's clear in the Time Warrior by virtue of Hal's bow and arrow skills and what happens, but in this one it's not so clear. So that's a little bit of something that could have been a bit clearer there to indicate that, because obviously Steyr's going in because he announces him, I'll kill you all later after I've pumped myself up, but we don't get a little scene to show the pumping taking place.
Yes, whereas if it was Stephen Moffat
we saw the deflating.
If it was Stephen Moffat or RTD, you know that they'd have done that stupid timey-wimey thing where they say, oh, the Doctor was actually in that spaceship with an arrow and you can't see it. He landed there and you think all that stuff. But yeah, I see your point that it was just here's something from place.
All it took was a one little additional scene inside the spaceship to show that this happening and Harry taking this thing away. But unfortunately, time... money.
I have to say, I'm always impressed when I watched when he comes out of his spaceship and he's dying. And when he falls, there's a moment, there's an actor in there, a stunt man, and the legs, are you always intrigued? The legs go in such a weird direction. I'm thinking, whoa, is that possible? Because it really does look very erratic and almost...
So one of the well-known contortionists.
Yeah,
they can get themselves in all sorts of positions.
Very much. I think the Shooty Doctor might love this. So I think we need to come to our ratings now, everybody. So you know the order, because my PowerPoint slide obviously can only cope with a certain order. Well, if I'm being fair and I'm being as consistent as I can be to every one I've done, including Nuwho, this would go down for me as a good. There's enough there, but it's it doesn't have enough peaks all the time. So I once that my slide is deciding to not show good, so I'll move on. I'm not quite sure why it's
outstandingly good.
Yes, outstandingly good. That gets me out of it.
No.
So John, you're the next one up. What's your rating for this one?
Just as it comes no surprise that you and I are once again in agreement Brendan. It's never going to top the heights this, but there's so much going on here, which makes this a special little Doctor Who story. My favourite of all the two-parters. And, you know, nostalgia just washes all over this. Tom is wearing his classic fourth Doctor outfit this, and he looks straight away, even 3 stories in, every inch the Doctor, and my heart just grows and when I see that, you know. So, but good overall.
Right, good overall. Michelle, it's you next.
Good overall. It was fun to watch on a snowy morning with my 2 poodles on my lap.
Yeah, and you said it's again. I know you said it earlier. This is the first time you've seen it.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And did it live up to what you'd heard?
Actually, I haven't heard much about this. All I heard about was that the Sontaran was sick and so his mask didn't fit properly. That's all I've heard about this episode.
Okay, I always think it's slightly underrated. Really, I have to say.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Yes,
It really didn't fit him that bad. I mean, it is what it is, and his health was important, and we lost him way too soon.
And I do love the Ian Marter target book of this story. I have to say that. Okay, Hugh, what's your rating?
I'm another good overall. One thing I'd like to say about this, because we've had a couple where we've marked good overall, and people might wonder about the difference between something being outstanding and good. Actually, you know, for the vast majority of Who that I like, good overall is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That if you're hitting that, that's not really a criticism in many ways. You know, outstanding is where everything works, and there's maybe 10 stories that I'd put in that. We've covered quite a few of them, but good overall is what should be the aim of Doctor Who, because outstanding is where you're taking risks, and sometimes it doesn't work, and it falls down a bit. This is what Doctor Who should be about. This sort of stuff.
And the truth is, in classic Who, when they're churning out 28 episodes, 40 episodes, I think good, yes.
Sorry, Brendan, can I add to that, which is what you're saying there? Because that's all true. Because in terms of people looking at this and think, how do we evaluate this? Because, for example, the cliffhanger to this is outstanding. It's an absolutely outstanding cliffhanger. But when taken on balance, overall, this is a good story. It doesn't have much legacy for me, which influences my choice, unlike, say, someone like Terror of the Autons. But there are outstanding moments of this. There are outstanding parts of this in terms of direction, music, whatever. But Hugh's right. It aspires to be good Doctor Who, and it succeeds very, very well.
And it doesn't try and do too much. That's the point. It just does what it does well. And I have to say, I kind of have one criteria in my own head, and we're all different. That's allowed. And it's good and useful that Hugh's kind of outlined where we go with this normally. But I need my Doctor Who to try and scare me. You know, that's classic Doctor Who to me. I don't want Doctor Who to entertain me and do a song and dance routine. I don't want to see a love scene. I want my Doctor Who to get me thrilled and scared a little bit. I never went behind the settee, but I certainly didn't move sometimes. And I was always scared in Time Warrior and Sontaran Experiment. I was scared of the Sontaran. They looked lethal to me. They looked angry. And one of them scared me. So that's kind of where we're going with it. Now, Brian, what's your score?
Oh, same as everybody. Good overall. It's excuse me, it's a very, very, very good, solid story. And the only reason, like, some people, I could see why some people might be tempted to say, you know, outstanding, just because of the fear factor and how it's all tightly put together and they just churn it out, the great music, the atmosphere and all that. But there's a very simple reason to explain this rating. Look at the story before it and look at the one after it. And those are both outstanding. Ark in Space, Genesis of the Daleks, you can't put that in the same category with those two.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Both, I mean, both of those we haven't done, I'm pleased to say, because if you do all the classics, you've got none left.
Pick the good ones.
Yeah. I mean, it's the 50th year of season 12, and I've picked the one that's not mentioned as much, a bit like Revenge of the Cybermen. I thought, no, we'll have a look at this. It is 50 years. well done. The Golden Jubilee of Sontaran Experiment, and actually the introduction of Tom Baker. Never mind, Mrs. Thatcher, Tom Baker. That's great.
Baker.
So thank you, everybody. Yeah, there's so much in that one, but thank you very much again. Thank you, Michelle. Hopefully the snow goes away.
Oh no, it's already. When we first started filming this, it wasn't sticking to the ground. Now it's a complete winter wonderland out there. 2 hours, just 2 hours.
And thank you, John and Hugh. I'm saying that because obviously the puppets. I can't apologize enough that they were slagging off your Glaswegian roots and being the Neanderthal thugs.
Shocking.
I can't
I think
control
they were
them.
slugging off a few other things too, but that's just me.
And thank you, Brian. I think have you got snow as well?
Thank you. Do I have some news?
Snow.
Snow. Oh, it's normal around here. Yeah, we've got snow everywhere. But
Right.
like
well,
I said, Canadians, we cope.
well, we'll get 10th Planet on our Seeds of Doom. That's what you need to do. That's what. So everybody, thank you very much. That
Thank
was
you.
Sontaran Experiment.